I love science too.
I love science. I don't want to fight. I want to laugh about it. I'm an idiot. I believe in flat earth. I'm crazy. That's all you need to know.
Going back to some of the big players in the system who rolled out the system step by step a long time ago, and this is one of them. It's the book called Man Stands Alone. It's actually by Sir Julian Huxley, not by Thomas Huxley. They're all descended from each other, and they're very much like the Darwins. I'm certain they're interbred with probably one other family. But it's Man Stands Alone. Now, Sir Julian Huxley was the founder of UNESCO. He helped found it to create a world culture by indoctrination of the young worldwide in the same culture, so to be pliable to the new system that they plan to bring in. And I'm going to tell you how he does it in his book. Back in a moment after this break. Hi, folks, I'm Alan Watt, and we're cutting through the matrix. I'm going to go into Sir Julian Huxley, the brother of Aldous Huxley, and those who've read Brave New World by Aldous Huxley can pretty well testify he had the future all sussed out because they planned it that way. They were talking about genetic engineering back in the 1930s and long before. Long before. The whole family, as I say, from Charles Darwin onwards, and Sir Thomas Huxley was the best pal of Darwin. He became the champion of Darwinism, and mainly to destroy religion. That was a must-be for the humanist society. And that's what this is all about, this humanist society. They've pretty well achieved their goals, and they're the ones who are now going into the transhumanist phase. Now, we've all accepted humanism because we've been dehumanized, you see. And that's actually in his book that he wrote in the 1920s, 1926 to be precise. But he was also given, he was awarded UNESCO's Kalinga Prize. He was the first Director General for UNESCO, again to create a world's standardized population through indoctrination. The Darwin Medal of the Royal Society in 1956. The Darwin Wallace Medal of Linnaean Court Society in 1958. Also knighted in that same year, became Sir Julian Huxley. And it says here, he also was awarded the Lasker Foundation, interesting group to look into. Again, all these big foundations all intertwined with these characters. The Lasker Foundation in the category of Planned Parenthood and world population. Well, Planned Parenthood was population reduction, basically through the world population reduction. That's what it's all about back then. Still is. So from his book, Man Stands Alone, what does he say? Now, you understand there's a complete religion here. Humanism is a religion. And like all religions, it has a goal, a belief system. It believes in evolution. They also, amongst their own circles, talk about the fact that they're the most evolved types, being the natural aristocracy, the intellectual group. And because they've thrown off any hangover from gods or God, then there's nothing to stop them. Man is God. And they've been the most evolved of all men, are the bigger gods who have the right to shape the world. And after all, they're right too, in a sense, because if no one else will, somebody will, so they're doing it anyway. Man Stands Alone in 268, page 268. This is what Sir Julian says here. At the moment, there are vast possibilities of value running to waste because they're not harnessed or because they're not even realized. The number of subtle and individual minds that find themselves unable to join wholeheartedly in any corporate organization is increasing. They find themselves over-individualized. See, individualized people can't be managed, and that was their biggest problem. That's why they created, and I went through this before, the team effort. Everything's team, the team organization. It says the organizations in which the individual can lose himself and taste self-sacrifice, very important part. Remember, world service too is all part of this. Self-sacrifice and corporate enhancement are for the most part blatantly irrational, like political parties, or committed to out-of-date or one-sided ideas like most of the churches, or like public schools that's the private schools, they encourage crude and juvenile loyalties, or as in a teamwork of sport, they satisfy only a limited part of human nature. Now think, this was written in 1926. He says the one real task for humanism, as I see it, is to develop organizations which will satisfy the need for corporate action and loyalty. Now, you know darn well this is why they brought Bernays and all these boys on board, to get all this going. And so it was taught all through business from then on, the team spirit, loyalty, etc. Desire we all have to feel of use and to provide an outlet for self-sacrifice as well as for intellectual aspirations. His friend, Mr. H.G. Wells, once sketched out such an organization in his New Samurai, worth the read, by the way. They're talking about the ones who'd spearhead the system into the future. The success they might have is foreshadowed by the success already attending such imperfect adumbrations of the idea as the Boy Scouts. So they're talking about using youth groups, Boy Scouts of the various youth movements in Central Europe, like, I guess, the Hitler Youth and the Young Communist League. I do not think it would be impossible to build up a scheme of the sort in connection with education. This is long before he was made, even before the UN was set up. He became the head of the one organization that would give it a youth culture for the whole world, standardized education, which is just indoctrination, remember. Connection with education, though at present most people are not already committed to organizations, are too much ashamed of showing enthusiasm in unfashionable ways to begin planning along the proper lines and on the proper scale. The fact is that no community has ever yet set itself seriously to the task of scientific humanism. Now, remember, his brother, in his books, was talking about a future to come where science would run the entire planet. They would be the new gods. He also called it a scientific dictatorship and saw no reason why it should not happen. Of course, he saw no reason because he was part of a massive group that was already going to bring it in. Well organized, well funded, and knew exactly where they were going. So he wrote Brave New World and Brave New World Revisited. And here's the brother, Sir Julian, talking to the scientific community, as this book was intended for, who would then bring it into play. And we continue with this book, because there's some great stuff in it, after the following break. Hi folks, I'm Alan Watt. We're cutting through the matrix and reading from Sir Julian Huxley's book. Remember too, he was a co-founder of the World Wildlife Fund. It's all part of it because they knew 100 years ago they'd eventually bring in a system and train us over generations to come to believe that we were no higher than any other animal or insect on the planet. That's all part of the humanist agenda. And they've been very successful. That's what Maurice Strong's Earth Summit was all about. And all the other ones have come since then. It's all part of the same network that's been on the go for a long time, fully funded, well-trained, and they've had access to all media outlets, and they churn out book after book after book. They're the ones who've trained and are training right now the most radical army to grow up for conservation, the Greenies, who will punish people and think they're doing the world a favor because they'll be so heavily indoctrinated into saving the world from the bad adults and so on. On page 269, Sir Julian says this, because they knew they were going to set up this organization for this period. And this was written in 1926. He said, "Is it possible to plan a body which shall engender enthusiasm and canalize devotion after a fashion of a young religious order, but which shall not fall into the dangers of religious dogmatism and shall not by defects in its organization slip into the conservatism or worldliness which is the usual fate of so many orders?" So he's talking about setting up a system. They had many ideas back then. An Earth Army was one. That came back out again in the 1990s, the Earth Army. That's the term they used for the greening process of the world, this whole save the planet idea, and now it's coupled with the farce of global warming. And that's what I've said, it doesn't matter what the weather does or if it freezes us all to death, they'll still be shouting global warming because they never change their agenda.